Welcome back, everyone, to America's Mom. I'm Sharona Bishop, your host. And of course, we start out today with a lot more news. If you are paying attention, it's a really fun time in America to be a conservative. Every time a Democrat opens up their mouth, it is cringe factor and it guarantees yet another victory for a Republican or a conservative. It's almost to the point where it's ludicrous. It's like, are they trying to lose? Who is advising these people? That's what I want to know. Who is advising them? Who is telling them to behave the way they're behaving? Who is telling these people how to interact with society? I just want to take a second and acknowledge that you saw the video. Hopefully, here first. It was her her debut right here on America's Mom. Jasmine Crockett, straight out of Texas, is just the gift that keeps on giving and demonstrating why it is that we can no longer tolerate Democrats in office. This is a young woman who does not come from the hood. She actually is not trash. She actually is very privileged, comes from money, has been hyper educated, but she acts like the epitome of a hood rat. Yep. I come from white trailer trash, so I have no problem saying it. She literally acts like she has no mother. Her latest event includes attacking Laura Loomer's producer. Let's take a look at this video.
Shoveling horse manure.
Hello, Congresswoman.
Shoveling horse manure. Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, well,
Wait, Congresswoman Crockett.
two wheelbarrow loads.
But it sounds.
Congresswoman Crockett, you were recently on a Tesla takedown call calling for violence on the
that's what it is
29th.
to be here, right?
Would you like to clarify your comments?
Good luck.
As you can see.
Congresswoman,
No,
will you
it's just
condone
a-
violence? Will you condemn violence at the Tesla?
It doesn't get any classier than that. From her flapping eyelashes to her R&B hit last week or last month, whenever it was, to now actually physically assaulting another person. And thankfully, it was caught on camera. If you haven't noticed, Ed Martin is being tagged on all of the videos with Jasmine because he is the DC U.S. attorney. And it sounds to me like people are wanting him to investigate and potentially press charges against this woman for assaulting a staffer. I don't know what's going on with the Democrats. I think by and large, what we see is a major vacuum of leadership. There is none. All of the old cronies who've been handling the global takedown of America are all scattering as they're being uncovered, as Doge is revealing all of their many illicit ties to foundations, NGOs, 527s that have been funding these psychopaths who've been running our government for way too long. They're scattering like the rats they are. And behind, they're leaving a mess of young, undisciplined, who have no vision for the global takeover, apparently, politicians who are getting theirs while they can. And it's really creating a mess for the Democrat Party. It's probably going to be one of those things where we seriously say, let's just start over. Just start over. My grandpa was a Democrat, and I remember having this conversation with him because I've always known that I was a conservative. I've always known I was a Christian conservative as early as I can remember. And my grandpa said, I'm a JFK Democrat. And I really believe that workers need to be supported. They are often fighting against their employers. He worked in the coal mines in Colorado, and he really believed that there needed to be more support for the workers. That's why he was a Democrat. By and large, what is at the Democrat Party today would never be recognized by my grandfather and certainly would never be supported. I think one of the challenges that we actually are facing right now in the Republican Party is we have so many Democrats who have left the Democrat Party. They want to be at home somewhere. They understand the two-party system. They want to be a part of primaries. They want to be a part of electing representation, and they're joining the Republican Party. But foundationally, principally, they still believe in big government. And I think we can see that in the polling right now, where it looks like about 56% of the country, although they said they wanted the government to be exposed if they were wasting our taxpayer dollars, they're freaking out right now that it's actually happening. They're like, whoa, wait, just kidding. I just like the idea of it. But when it really comes down to it, most people love the idea of big government, that big government will be taking care of them, that big government will be providing retirement, that big government will continue to be the largest employer in this country. And I'm not really sure what to do with that. It's a mindset that needs to be educated out of people. We have, a record now of at least the last 30 years of incredible indoctrination through the public education system, where systematically our kids, and by extension, they've grown up, a lot of them are my age and older, and they really do believe that government is not only necessary, but benevolent. Now, our founders didn't. They understood that government was always going to do what Doge is exposing right now, seek its own and advance its own agenda, regardless of the rights of the American people or the people that they serve in any given country. So education is needed right now more than ever. Thankfully, we have people who are conservative, principled, foundationally solid in their understanding of a constitutional republic and a constitutional governance of our country. Because if we didn't, we would continue to deteriorate down this path that Joe Biden heavily advanced over the last 4 years. And I don't think it would take long before we truly were a communist country or before we really saw China feel emboldened enough because of our lack of discipline, because the doors were literally open to take over this nation and insert themselves. I know that's still a concern that's happening right now, and people are preparing and countries are preparing for that. But I really saw that we were on the fast track to a literal takeover of America. We saw it on the southern border. We saw it in Ben Bergquam's broadcasting of the Panama Canal, and that the Chinese had already taken over our embassies there. We've seen it in the northern border, that China had already been sitting and doing lots of practice exercises on the northern border between Canada and America. This is not hyperbole. It is not shock and awe. This is the preparations that were taking place. And if we don't do a quick turnabout and make sure that we get back to educating this generation that's coming up now on American exceptionalism, on the founding principles that govern a free country, and gosh, we're going to get into actual elections, securing our elections at the end of our show today, then we really are going to continue to be in peril. I love what President Trump is doing right now. I love the appointment of Linda McMahon as the Secretary of Education. She is following through on everything she said she was going to do during the Senate hearings. The Department of Education has officially been slashed by 50% employment, which is incredible. Several thousand people are gone who were doing nothing but advancing the globalist communist agenda across this country, feeding off the teat of the government. And they are not needed. And it's quite impressive to watch people across this country understand finally what's going on here. Education is going to be returned to the states. It's going to be returned to the local level where there will be actual accountability. Right now, accountability is always thrown at the federal government. It's thrown at the NEA. It's thrown at the Secretary of Education. That goes away now. That goes away. The responsibility and burden of educating kids will fall to local government where it should be. Because I remember a story not too long ago out of Pakistan. Pakistan was not having vaccination clinics. They were not allowing the World Health Organization into their country. And finally, one day they did. Okay. It was just a couple of years ago that this story takes place. The parents are convinced to give their children the polio. It's a nasal vaccination, and they, breathe it up through their nose, and it's supposed to vaccinate the children from polio. The parents were like, they were so resistant, and the WHO worked on them and worked on them and worked on them. And finally, they conceded and said, okay, you can vaccinate all of our children. Okay. And they said, okay. So they did. Immediately within hours, the children start vomiting, they're getting sick, they become lethargic, all of these symptoms of vaccination stress on the body and poisoning. Do you understand that on a local level like that, the Pakistani fathers and mothers, what they did, they were able to come back, and I'm not advocating for this, but I am saying local government is best. They came and burned down the clinic. And I won't say what they did to the healthcare administrators from the World Health Organization who delivered those poisonous shots or those poisonous vaccinations to their children. But you get where I'm going here. Local control is best because it allows us to be able to hold those accountable who keep wanting to cast the burden of responsibility off to the next person. We're not having it anymore. If your kids are failing where you live, it is because of your local school board. It is because of your local school administrators. It will be because of your local superintendent and your local teachers and your local principals, and they will need to be held accountable. You're not going to be able to blame the president anymore for your failing school districts, and that is exactly as it should be. In addition to that, we've had great personalities over the last few years who've continued to deliver great information to us. I remember, I think it's been about 4 years ago now, I found this account. And this account was amazing. And I was literally sending it to everybody that I knew saying, if you want to know what's going on, you need to follow this account. If you're not sure what's happening, you need to follow this account. She was taken down multiple times over the last 5 years, has had to rebuild over and over and over, but has become one of the most consistent and sincere voices that we go to seek truth in what is actually happening in our country, happening within our elected officials, and putting the pieces together to help us understand the greater scheme, the greater plan that the globalists and the deep state have been initiating in America. If you haven't met her, I'm so glad to introduce you guys today to Toria Brooke. She's joining us here on America's Mom. Toria, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I think the last time I saw you was Mar-a-Lago.
Well, actually, I saw you in DC at the inauguration.
Okay,
Remember?
it's
I
been
know.
quite a few years, but yes, again,
Yes.
thank you for having me, and let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So, first off, give us a little bit of background on you. How did you get involved in being the voice of reason? You work very closely with Cash Patel and that whole gang. Tell us how you arrived here, because again, a lot of people have shown up that we don't trust. That have been clickbait features that somehow manage to keep their accounts going. They have zero accountability. They're never taken down. They push a whole lot of things, conspiracies forward that never come to pass, but they make a heck of a lot of money. You, on the other hand, have been a voice of truth, of reason, of solidarity, of unity, even in this movement, and always putting the pieces together. And for that reason, you've been punished over and over and over by the removal of your accounts.
So I think the difference between myself and many other accounts and pundits is that I don't always give my opinion, right? I think it's up to the American people to decide what they believe in, and I just give the facts. So instead of propagating and inserting all of my content with what I think every day, I just give the straight story and I report internationally. So I give a lot of different things going on around the world. And I think that's important because the geopolitical landscape actually helps us understand better what's going on here. And as we're seeing with all the meetings that President Trump's having with world leaders, it's really a worldwide phenomenon what's happening as far as censorship and government overreach and corruption. So Doge is really leading the charge in other countries finding out what's going on with their own governments.
It's been a really scary thing, I think, for a lot of nations to understand. And I don't know how we frame this exactly, but it has been our agencies, it has been covert operations coming out of America that have been sabotaging other countries, other nation states. How do you deal with that, knowing that we love our country, we are totally America first. This is the home that we are working so desperately to try to reform, I guess, back to our original exceptionalism. How do you put those pieces together in your mind when you're delivering information?
I like to take news sources from all over the world. So I don't just take the Fox Newses, the CNNs into account when I'm reporting. I like to look at RT, which has actually been suspended mostly in the US. You're not allowed to share a lot of different things. So if you're on Telegram, there's actually certain channels that you cannot access because in the United States, we're limited to what we can see. So as I can, I try to find these outlets, I translate them, and I just put together based on all the facts what's really going on. As we know, propaganda is often used, especially in the United States, to curate the narrative so that it can transform what people believe in. But China, who is often accused of much propaganda and nefarious actions, they were one of the first countries to recognize the fact that the news is propaganda. So it's people like myself that come in and try to deliver clarification on what's actually going on in the world. And that's why people like yourself found me.
So, what do you think is the most important thing for Americans to understand right now? We are rapidly changing. The American political landscape is changing very quickly right now. It's made people very nervous. You know, initially there was so much surge of support for Doge, but when they actually got in there and started cutting the fat and exposing all of these NGOs and the huge money corruption, people have panicked. Rasmussen is reporting, I believe it's 56% of people are saying this is happening too fast. They don't support the huge federal employee layoffs and firings. What do you think about that?
Well, what's interesting is there's actually right now investigations into other countries with Doge related issues. So we're finding that there was a railway bridge collapse out in Serbia, and now it's being investigated by London's government whether there was a misappropriation of funds that were supposed to be repairing the bridge. So even though there are many people that are complaining about Doge and they're fearful because these agencies have been basically laundering money for other purposes. I mean, we saw that they were literally paying for circumcisions in Mozambique. Like, why are we paying for medical transformations or transgender care for people that have nothing to do with the Americans and nothing to do with what we're trying to fight for here as far as freedoms go, and just building transparency with the American people and fighting for Americans to have more money in their pockets. I know Doge is planning on sending out checks to Americans once their investigations are up in the next few years. I know that maybe many people won't be happy with how much money we'd be receiving, but when you think about it, if it's anything more than the $700 paychecks that the victims in Maui and North Carolina received, I mean, I think something's better than nothing at this point. And hopefully we see the dissolution of the Federal Reserve and other private entities that have been robbing Americans for years.
That people don't even understand. The Federal Reserve is not federal.
It's
I
all
love the verbiage, don't you?
Yeah, because they try to manipulate things so that people believe, oh, hey, we have no control over this and the American people are powerless. But we're actually returning power back to the people. And that's what's happening right now with the FBI and the DOJ as well.
I want to get into the FBI in just a moment, but in all your investigative work over the last 5 years, what was the most surprising story that you covered that's left an impression on you?
I think my personal coverage of Russiagate in DC. So I was there for the trials for United States versus Sussman, which was the case of the DNC creating, obviously, the Steele dossier and trying to essentially threaten Trump's run and suggest that he was stealing the election, which is so ironic because projection is the greatest thing that we've seen happen in the last several years. When there were FBI agents actually testifying on the stand about the data that came through from the DNC to try to discredit Trump, they described this data as 5150-ish. And the term 5150 literally means it's basically like when someone's mentally ill and deranged. This data it wasn't valid, and it's almost similar to this whole incident that's going on right now with the Signal chats. And they're suggesting that our, cabinet heads were discussing the Houthi strikes and discussing things that were classified. It's like these men are intelligent people. Whatever the Atlantic's reporting is obviously fallacious. And President Trump even came out and said he knew nothing about it. And I think they're doing everything right now they can to discredit our new movement.
I definitely see that happening. Projection, you're talking about projection is what they're doing, but they're putting it on whoever it is that they're attacking and going after. Kash Patel. I want to share this video before we talk about him. He's a close friend of yours. You've been a huge supporter. We had the great opportunity to meet up with Kash in California. He came out and did an event for us, and he's just been one of the most inconspicuous people to be in such a unbelievable position of leadership. And what I mean by that is the first time I met Kash, he was running around in tennis shoes, tennis shorts, and a t-shirt. He is so not. It's not that he's totally aware. He does not need any attention. He is not looking for fame. He's not looking to be acknowledged or credited for anything. He just puts his head down and gets to work. And this first interview that he just did yesterday on Fox News with Trey Gowdy, I just want to share a small clip of this. And I want to get your take and your understanding of the person of Kash Patel and what projects they are working on right now. Because the American people are saying, it's been how many days now, no arrests. They're not seeing the investigations. They want to see all this. So I want to get your take on this. Let's run that video.
It's around Washington, D.C. We have 11,000 employees for the FBI in that 50-mile radius, give or take. And a third of the crime does not happen in this region. A large portion of one of my priorities, fighting violent crime, crushing narco traffickers, stopping fentanyl overdoses, is happening in any town USA across this country. And they need resources in the form not just of money, but manpower. So we're going to reorient our assets in Washington. We're going to look at it strategically, as we've been doing the last month, and send our agents and analysts and SOS operatives into the field to take on this violent crime explosion that has occurred over these last 4 or 5 years, and to make sure that every state and every county, be it in my hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada, or up in Montana or in Kansas or Iowa or Maine, is all safe and secure. And the best way to do that is through a proper show of force with the FBI men and women who do this job so courageously every day out in the streets fighting crime.
Victoria, I want to hear your thoughts about this.
So essentially what Kash is saying in that interview, which I loved, by the way, he did a phenomenal job, is that the priority of the FBI and the DOJ is the truth and serving the American people under President Trump. And after the politicization of the old FBI under Comey and Wray, that was the goal, to restore public trust in the Bureau. And right now, the importance is having a marriage between the FBI and the DOJ and making sure that everything is accomplished. In the last 3 weeks, the FBI actually arrested and brought to justice with the DOJ 3 of the top 10 FBI's most wanted, which didn't happen in the last 12 months prior to President Trump's administration. So we can already see how much work is being done. In 1 week's time, we brought to justice one of the architects of the Abbey Gate explosion that actually killed 13 of our service members. And we went into multiple countries, including including Pakistan, and leveraging the relationships that we have there. So the partnership that we have right now between CIA Director Ratcliffe, as well as Defense Secretary Hegseth, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, all of it is just the camaraderie together of everyone looking to one mission and trying to accomplish the same goals. So Patel even said, we're not ignoring national security. This is a shift in the threat dynamic, and we're making sure we tackle everything between narco, drug trafficking, and violence. That includes sex trafficking, the fentanyl and heroin overdoses, and gang murders and rape. Every 7 minutes in this country, an American overdoses on a drug. Every 6.5 minutes, a woman or child is raped. And twice now in this country, an individual is lost due to homicide. So that is what we're tackling right now. And that is the national security crisis.
It's really fascinating. Steve Kramer, who is one of the main people responsible for finally tracking down the Golden Gate Killer in California, shared with me that in 2021, November of 2021, he actually quit his job as an attorney in the FBI field office of Orange County. And what he said was that that office, and it was an extension of the FBI across the country, were no longer interested in tracking down violent criminals and solving cases. They had converted all their resources to tracking down grandmothers who were at January 6th. Toria, what is happening with all of that? You know, January 6th, I know President Trump, of course, we understand, allowed for pardons for those who wanted them. I'm not aware of any commuting of sentences yet. But what investigation, if there is any, will there be any, is there anything pending in the way that the FBI conducted themselves, where they did stop investigating violent crime, where they did stop investigating even local terrorism, in lieu of going after political prisoners?
So I know a few people have gotten out who are very significant. So I don't know if you know Sarah McAbee, but her husband, they just gave a meeting actually, I believe last night in Tennessee, just discussing his experiences. And I do think that this is a priority for the administration. I'm not aware yet of the actual investigations that are going now, but I know that it's important, as you know, we got President Trump elected. I don't think that they're ignoring the fact, however, though, that there were physically violent people on the grounds that day that were not representative of MAGA. And I think these people should be held accountable, because that's not what we stand for. And there's a difference between the people who were there peacefully protesting and there in support of President Trump, and then those that were trying to make us look bad.
Yeah. And there definitely was that. Some of those people are being heralded as heroes right now. And we probably don't need to get into it on this interview, but I am very keenly aware of that. Some of those videos that are floating around. I guess what I'm also asking is, will there be any discipline for the FBI directors in these very high crime areas who chose to forego actually investigating real crime in lieu of going after this political game that was being played by the Biden administration? Is there any talk about that, or does Cash plan to just move forward in unity with what the agenda is now? This is a question that's being asked: is what about that time when our government literally was targeting Americans and using the full weight of the DOJ to do it?
So I know right now we've sent thousands of documents that were requested to Capitol Hill to analyze and take back to their constituents and respond accordingly regarding violent crime and terrorists. I know as FBI director, Cash is not going to interfere with the field investigators that are, line agents as well, going on the scenes every day, but this is a priority to him. So we'll just see how this kind of unfolds. But I think we're really getting back to an era of credibility and allowing good cops to be good cops, and taking down the bad cops. So I would assume that there's going to be some kind of movement in the next couple of months, but we're just gonna have to see how it plays out.
It's such a strange thing, isn't it, to be on this side where we are watching America. The landscape is changing very radically. It is an effort to restore, like you said, credibility and trust into these departments again, into these agencies again. What are you the most hopeful about that you're watching firsthand? You get a lot of information the rest of us just don't know or don't see happening. And so those of us who are sitting out here going, what's coming next? We want justice so bad. Is there anything that you can, share with us that maybe we don't see in the mainstream right now about potential investigations, or potential even, as people have been asking, will there be arrests of some of those major players that participated in the election frauds? Or even, I still remember President Trump saying, lock her up. Is there anything about that stuff that we should know about?
Well, I believe after we saw what happened with AutoPen, that a lot of these executive orders that he signed and these pardons weren't even valid. So I'd be interested to see what happens with that. I know that there's also a big focus right now as far as the intersection of illegal aliens and violent crimes against children. The FBI and the DOJ are partnering on this with Department of Homeland Security. You know, we've seen Kristi Noem down boots on the ground checking things out. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out, because as we know, sex trafficking has been a big issue for a lot of us in this movement, making sure that we pay attention to all the investigations that are going on. And I know that's a priority for the new FBI director.
So, as far as your role right now, Toria, what does your life look like, and how are you? What are you doing as far as assisting? You're continuing to bring us all the great latest breaking stories that people really do need to be paying attention to. And truly, even before you and I met, I really was. I was sending it out to everybody and saying, "This is what's really going on. Pay attention right here. She's delivering the real truth." And the fact that you were taken down over and over without putting your opinion out there. You weren't putting your opinion out there. You were saying these are the stories happening across the world, as well as the country. What is next for you?
I am still figuring that out. You know, I'm obviously in media, and if the right doors are opening there, then I will continue to be in media. But I'm also open to going into the government. So, caught a couple irons in the fire, and wherever God has me placed is where I'm going to go. But I might end up running a congressional race that's in the works right now. And you will see what happens for me.
Well, first of all, I'm proud to know you. And secondly, I really appreciate again all the great work you're doing. If you guys are not following, you need to be following Toria Brooke on X. And then, of course, on Instagram, one of my favorite places. It's really the only place I go to check Instagram anymore. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for giving us an update. Anything else, the American people, that we didn't ask that the American people should know and understand about the new FBI director, Kash Patel?
Think Cash Patel is someone that is a team player. As you know, he is on a hockey team, and he's just building a sense of camaraderie, as I already mentioned, with these other cabinet members. As you can see, there's a great dynamic happening and open dialogue between the new CIA director Radcliffe, as well as security advisor Mike Waltz and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. So I just am really excited to see the dynamic that's happening right now. And this is an administration that not only has the people's backs, but has each other's. So we don't always see this. And I think it's an exciting time and an inspirational era in America for us to get back to work.
Absolutely. We're going to get back to work on that note. Toria Brooks, thank you so much for joining us on America's Mom.
Thank you so much.
Well, for me, what I can say when I saw the Signal chat was I was like, awesome. I listen, I don't know why people don't see what's going on here, but there's no way that men of this caliber just got caught up on a Signal chat with the Atlantic and we're like, oh, whoops, uh-oh. Give me a break, you guys. Kyle Seraphin does a great breakdown of exactly what that Signal chat was about. I couldn't agree more. This is definitely, they knew whatever they said there was going to be exposed. And I have to just piggyback it a little bit, because one of the biggest things that came out on that Signal chat was that the EU is pathetic. Yeah, it is. It's real pathetic. Here's the thing about the EU. Here's the thing about those nation states over there, by and large. Even on the conservative side, I have witnessed this firsthand. And producer Lauber, he's on here with me. He's seen it firsthand too. What these leaders do, I'm not saying they're bad people, but I'm saying they want all of the good that comes with President Trump. They want all the blessing, they want all the reward, they want all the gifts, but they don't want to act like they know him. They don't want to admit they have a friendship with him. They don't want to admit that they would love to go to dinner with him and they would love a little bit of that testosterone that he has for themselves. They just don't want to admit that. And it's a really strange thing. They want all of the blessing of the Trump phenomena, but they don't want any of his presence. It's a strange, strange thing. So, yeah, I completely agree with what was read in that Signal chat. I think the EU should know that the cabinet leaders running this country think that they are pathetic, because they absolutely are. They will not fight for themselves. It's just so few who will stand up against the government, they talk a lot, they assemble a lot, but they're not doing anything. There's very few people that you can really point to over in the EU, any of those EU nation states, that you say, wow, that is someone who really gets it. They understand freedom. There is one, though, and I do want to talk about him for just a moment before we do our moment to thank our sponsors for the show today. And that is George Simeon. I have to tell you, in a room full of 36 world leaders, George Simeon stands out, and he always has. From the first moment I met him, they flew out here to CPAC. He is currently the leader of the AUR in Romania and also running for president after the previous candidate for president that you may recognize. Caitlin, thank you. Georgescu was ousted. He won, and they said, no, just kidding. We're throwing out the presidential results. And then he was denied the opportunity to run again just a couple of short weeks ago. And so George Simeon has stepped in and appointed and supported by Caitlin Georgescu to run as president of Romania. I believe he will win. From the first time I met him at CPAC a few years ago, I understood why it was that he was so provocative for the deep state globalists and why he was such a hero to the Romanians. And this man is someone who has, hyper educated, has a firm grip on American freedom, what that actually looks like, has been educated both there and here, and really understands that if there is no real freedom, you cannot prosper. If you don't have self-determination, you cannot prosper. And so he's been fighting to that end, arrested more than 12 times. The last time that the police tried to arrest him, actually, they made the decision. They were told to arrest him and they said, no, we're not arresting him. They literally got tired of arresting him. Okay, because he never did anything illegal. He never did anything wrong. He simply was a voice out there for the people, for the public. And again, not just a ragamuffin guy, nothing wrong with that, but this is a highly educated man who's been in the world of politics for quite some time and understands the founding principles behind freedom. He stands out in a room of 36 world leaders. Of multiple other PMs in this room. He stands out. There's a fire in him that you rarely see in politics, and understanding a deep kind of in the core, in the crux of who he is. Freedom is at the center of who he is, and very few people get that. And when we were at the last event there in Brussels, Belgium, it was evident that people were nervous about talking about freedom. I didn't even bring up the Second Amendment, okay? Because I think had I brought up the Second Amendment, people would have convulsed and had heart attacks right there on the floor, because they don't understand, if you can't defend yourself from an out of control government, you don't have real freedom. So what will happen with that in any of those nation states, I do not know. It's why it's so laughable, and why President Trump is having to get involved over there is because there's no way for them to defend themselves. Ukraine had no way to defend themselves. Romania has no way to defend herself. Many of those countries, in fact, all of them, have no way to defend themselves. They don't have gun rights. They don't have gun ownership unless if you belong to a special club where you have a registry that accounts for all of the guns that you have, of course, right? Because that's what communists do. They track who has the ability to defend themselves from big government. It's a wild ride out there. There is no doubt. And in just a few short days, George Simeon is going to be hopefully elected as the new president of Romania, and some very huge things are going to change out there. The greatest thing that the president did, I'm not sure if I spoke about this, but I want to reaffirm it and I want to reiterate it. Based off of the experience that I'm having, the conversations I'm having with leaders over there, President Trump just thwarted World War III by sitting down with the head of NATO last week. That was one of the most important critical meetings that has happened. I don't think it's gotten near enough attention because I don't think people really understand how things were degrading so significantly over there in the EU bloc. The European Union wants to be a bloc. It wants to be the new Soviet Union. And I will tell you also, with their advancement of woke and DEI and low expectations and everybody being equally poor and unhappy and bowing to the government, receiving their stipend to be happy, eating bugs, owning nothing, that's the position of the EU right now. If they do not have more conservatives who are winning those parliament seats at the EU. And for that reason, it was very alarming to hear that NATO, what they weren't saying, I was saying. NATO was going to act as the physical arm for the EU. NATO was going to advance the policies of the EU by force if necessary. NATO was setting up the largest nuclear base in Romania. NATO was bringing in nuclear weapons into Romania for what? Well, we've talked about this before, but it was just a quick little shot across Ukraine to hit Russia and start World War III. In order to take over these lands, in order to get the outcome that they're looking for, which again is communism, utter poverty for everyone else, and just a few to own and have everything. They want the slave system enacted over there in the European Union. I believe it 100%. They want that. They want these countries, these nation states, to hate themselves and worship the EU and try to find their identity in the EU. And many of these nation states are bucking that. They want to love their countries. That's the attractive appeal with Trumpism. The Trump effect over there is Trump is giving them permission to love their countries again. And it is having an impact. But Trump stopped World War III just last week when he brought the head of NATO over here and held him accountable and said, made the public affirmation that Ukraine will not become a NATO state, right? And they agreed. No, they will not. And that is in the best interest of everybody over in that region, because destabilization is the name of the game for the deep state globalists. Those who are seeking the new world order, the one world order, they have to destabilize these nations in order to take control. Look at Africa. Look at what's happening in Syria right now. We covered that on Monday. The destabilization that's happening there is going to they already are in economic peril, okay? But what's happening now? With no stability, it's not like people are working their jobs and providing for their families and we're getting shipments of food and steady supplies coming into this country. No, you destabilize a country and then guess what? These people are looking for someone to help them. They'll take anybody that can help them. I can't imagine being in such a dire situation. I can't imagine what that would be like. I don't want to know what that would be like. But I do know that the biggest bat wins. They swoop in, they take over, and the people pledge allegiance to that new governance. And that's exactly what's happening in Syria. We have real-time evidence of this. Well, that's what the EU, I believe, wanted for that region. And President Trump has thwarted that once again. So we are looking forward to being back in Romania this week. We're going to be covering the lead up to the presidential elections. And I believe there's going to be a great victory for the people of Romania. And by extension, a lot of leaders in that region are going to be supported. They're going to be emboldened. They're going to be encouraged to stand firm and stand up for their own countries. Many people don't want to leave the EU. They believe NATO was the last stronghold of protection because NATO is the bodyguard out there. But if NATO is collaborating with the EU and is trying to cause unrest and is okay with causing this kind of dissemblance in these nation states, then you have to ask the question why and who is in charge that wants this new world order to be implemented in the EU. There was a time when all of this kind of rhetoric, this kind of talk I'm doing right now was just rhetoric. It was just conspiracy theory, but not anymore. Not anymore. So moving ahead, we're going to be paying attention to that race, George Simeone over there, because he has been such an active, concentrated leader in the whole region, not just in Romania. He is leading the way to freedom for that region and reminding people that God has established them. God has given them these natural rights, and they need to do everything they can to protect them. On that note, elections are everything, right? Elections are the reason we have the situations that we're in. Thank God. I thank God that the elections of 2024 led to the reestablishment of the Trump era here in America. It has massive impacts around the world, you guys, massive impacts. An adult back in the room is huge. Well, President Trump did not mince words in his press conference yesterday, talking about what he expects for America's elections. Take a listen.
And it's so easy to do it. And we should go to paper ballots. We should go to one-day voting. We should go to voter ID. And just one other thing, proof of a thing called citizenship in the United States. Wouldn't that be nice? How simple does that sound? Proof of citizenship, voter ID, one-day voting, and paper ballots. You know, paper ballots are very secure. They have watermark paper. It's very intricate stuff. It's very technologically advanced, even though it's paper. And you'd have no trouble. You wouldn't have dishonest elections, and you'd have them all done by 10 o'clock in the evening. You know, France went to that, and not that I want to copy anybody, but many others have also. And they had 38 million votes, and it was all done at 10 o'clock. They had a winner, they had a loser. That was it. Nobody was complaining. And they had it backed up with paper. And it's so easy to do. The other thing, you'd save about, this would cost you about 8% of what the machines cost. So the paper would be much less expensive. So if you're looking to save some money, that's a good way to save it. So it's a shame that we've gone through it. We've gone through a bad election, a really bad election. The election was so bad. And think of it. You wouldn't have had the October 7th disaster with it.
Okay, I want to point out the 92% savings from moving from machine costs to paper ballot hand count. I thought that was interesting how President Trump said that it would cost you 8% of what it normally costs you. Listen, you're going to save 92% if you will switch to paper ballot hand counted. Now, here is the reality check on these machines. Many of the states have entered into contracts that last for years. I know Mesa County, Colorado entered into a 9-year contract in 2021. 9 years of having to use these machines. So I don't know what the parameters are around that or what the legal ramifications are. But as we get out of these machine collaborations and agreements, we need to really consider, do you want to be having fair, transparent elections, or are you beholden to these machine companies? To me, it's just not science anymore. It's just a belief system. If you really believe that the machines are doing all the things that you say they are, and they're totally safe, they're totally secure, they're only counting ballots, then why do these machine companies keep suing people for billions and billions of dollars? If they are already in these, interesting relationships with secretaries of state across the country, and they are already in years-long contracts with these same secretaries of states, and they own all full rights to the machines, and the elected clerk and officials can't even access the machines, can't open the machines, can't see what's inside the machines, can't know anything about the machines, really. In fact, even audits have been outlawed now on these machines in many of the blue controlled states and even some of the red states. Don't we want to fight against that? Don't we want to at least ask why? Why is there so much safeguarding around these machines? There was a time when ballot harvesting was enough. And I think we've shown the graphs here many, many times. I'm going to post them back up on X today. This is from Dr. Doug Frank. These graphs demonstrate that before the implementation in 2001 of the electronic voting machines for the famous Hanging Chad election in Florida, that was the first time that Florida had used the machines for the national election. Before that famous election, the voter turnout was very different. And the charts really show that as we implemented machines, and I believe it was in 2012, that nationwide machines were implemented. And all of a sudden, it was a miracle. Voter turnout like skyrocketed. I mean, wow, like to levels that had never, ever been seen before, not even in the Goldwater years. Never been seen before, not even in the Reagan years, haven't been seen before. But I guess people were just really excited to push buttons. And so they turned out for elections on these machines. I don't know. But the ramifications, of course, have been hundred thousands of voters that can't be accounted for, with ballots that we don't even know if they exist or not, with electronic outcomes posing as truth, when probably more than likely they're manufactured. Guys, it is time for us to take charge of our elections. We can do this. And right now, if you go to causeofamerica.org, you can actually print off the whole paper ballot process. It's all there for you for free. These tools are available for you for free. Last night, we hosted the Colorado GOP chair debate. So this is the person who is running to represent the Republican Party in the state of Colorado. And, honestly, really something I didn't want to do. I was dreading it. I am tired. We'll just put it that way. And I'm more worn out from Colorado politics than I think anyone can even imagine. But we did it. And I'm so grateful to our friends, Debbie Perry Smith, our great helpers. And of course, to Kim Monson, if you do not follow and watch her show, she has an incredible radio show, Kim Monson. Go to kimmonson.com, MONSON.com, and go check her out over there. She was the moderator for the debate last night. And of course, the question of elections came up because, of course, there is the issue with Clerk Tina Peters, Mesa County, where I came from, our efforts there in Mesa County. And Clerk Tina Peters, of course, was the pound of flesh that Dominion voting machines needed in order to shut down the clerks across the country, to keep them from doing any investigating, any inquiring about the machines. And God forbid, don't ask if there are Bluetooth modems inside your machines. One of the funniest comments of the night was when Britta Horn, who is running for Colorado State GOP chair, she works with CPAC, I think sometimes too, and does some things there. She says in the debate, I am not kidding you, she says that she went to her clerk and said, hey, I'm just want to make sure that we have really great elections. I want to be here to see everything. So good on her. She wanted to be a part of the process. And the clerk had the audacity to say, well, we're getting new machines that definitely don't have Bluetooth modems. How do you know that? Until Clerk Tina Peter revealed in the reports, Mesa County Report 1, 2, and 3, that there were Bluetooth modems in the Mesa County voting machines, nobody knew there were Bluetooth modems, access to Wi-Fi in these machines, because they had been told that there weren't. Because according to the Colorado Constitution, you cannot have your machines, it says, must be air gapped. Okay. must be air gapped, meaning they cannot have any Wi-Fi access. So it's already illegal. And a clerk admitting that now they're getting machines that definitely don't have Bluetooth modems. How are you going to prove that? You can't open the machines. I want people to know this. If they are in contracts with ES&S or Dominion voting machines, you have zero access to those black box machines. And I would love it if at some point President Trump really came out and just gave a basic understanding, like he is so good at doing, to the American people. Your elected clerks that you elected to oversee your elections cannot even look inside these quote tabulators, these big calculators that are just supposed to add up the votes. They can't look inside them. They're not allowed to open them. If they do, they can be prosecuted, like Clerk Peters was, but she never opened the machine though. She never violated any of their rules or their laws. Nothing. Did not violate the contract. At that time, you could do a forensic image. You can't anymore. It's illegal now. Why? Because those reports showed that the machines are not air gapped and they contained, at least in Mesa County's case, no less than 36 Bluetooth modems. Access, Wi-Fi access. And then, of course, no way to know if anyone was accessing it. You guys, this is not the elections that our founders intended. We had enough problems when people were stuffing ballot boxes and holding people at gunpoint to prevent them from voting. Okay. That's a whole nother problem of its own. But you can't compete with how much a machine can cheat. You can't compete with the malfeasance of a machine versus a human being. Okay. There's no comparison. And I'm telling you, the list is growing longer every day of those who are coming out publicly saying, end the use of voting machines in our elections. Eric Prince has come out saying, end the use of machines in elections. He said it on PBD's podcast. Elon Musk has tweeted several times, and he would know about machines. And he said, it's impossible to protect these machines during our elections. It's not feasible. He has said it many times. President Trump, in his strong statement yesterday, declaring paper ballots, hand counted, voter ID, proof of citizenship. And I could not agree more. I'm thankful for common sense. An adult is back in the room. And here's the reality too. Democrats are going to benefit from this as well. Again, we opened up this way. I think we're going to close this way. My grandfather was not a left-wing maniac lunatic who thought it was okay to cut off the body parts of young children or castrate young boys or tell people that they were in the wrong bodies or sexualize and groom children. Okay. That never would have flown. That has become the platform for the Democrat Party. Oh, and by the way, there is no God. No God, no family, no boundaries, no gender, no sex. I mean, they're the party of no. They're the party of nothing. Okay. They're the party of crazy right now. My grandfather never would have been a part of a party like that. The Democrats, I believe, also have been hijacked. I believe a lot of their local elections have been hijacked. We had many instances where the primary elections, the primary races within each party, they felt many times Democrat candidates believed that their election had been stolen, that it was not fair results, that it was not accurate results. We even demonstrated in 2022 a county commissioner race, a primary race among the Democrat candidates, where one candidate didn't receive a single vote, but she voted for herself and her husband voted for her. So she knew she at least got 2 votes, but according to the outcome of the machines, she got none. Well, they did a paper ballot hand recount. And what do you know? Oh, my land. She actually won and became that county's commissioner. You guys. So it's not just isolated to Republicans. And I think that the most radical left-wing lunatic communists have been being selected in the primary races. That's why we're saying it's not just about national races. We have, I believe, 6 congressional races that were debatable. The outcomes were debatable in the 2024 election that just passed, and 3 very critical U.S. Senate seats that are very debatable that we do not believe the outcomes. There is a lot of conjecture happening right now in the state of Michigan. Patrick has been on the forefront of this. We had him on last week. He is the head of the Election Crime Bureau with Mike Lindell. And the work that he has done and the exposing that is happening there on the criminal actions of their Secretary of State, she is Jenna Griswold 2.0, Jocelyn Benson. And I tell you what, they are doing a major uncovering that are going to lead to criminal charges against Jocelyn Benson. And that's from 2020, guys, as well as 2022. So people who say we're not going backwards, people who say we can't look behind us, Guys, there's no way to move forward if we do not correct the mistakes of the past. There's no way to move forward. And that's within the Democrat and the Republican Party. I don't want Democrats joining the Republican Party because fundamentally, we do not have the same values. They are not going to support the RNC platform. They're not going to support life. And in fact, you noticed in this last writing of the RNC platform, there was adjustments made to the life portion. When does life begin? The protection and preservation of the innocent. I don't like that. The Republicans are the Republicans. We have a platform. We have something we adhere to, a standard. And I don't want that to be changed in order to allow for an enlarged tent. Anybody can vote Republican that wants to vote Republican. We have the better ideas. We have the better platform. We have the better understanding of how government is supposed to function. And of course, under President Trump's guidance, it is functioning. It is beginning to function the way it was meant to work. So I encourage you, go take a look today, causeofamerica.org, get familiar with the paper ballot hand count method. Let's advance Trump's agenda. Let's advance Mike Lindell's work of the last 5 years. Go to lindellplan.com today and go check it out over there. Make a contribution to keep this effort going. This is not something the federal government is going to be paying for. This is certainly not something the state governments are going to be paying for because they are too tied up in these electronic voting machine companies. It is really disturbing. The relationships that are happening between these companies, even between federal judges. It's incredible what is happening between these companies, these electronic voting machine companies, and our authorities. It's not right. So it's going to require the citizens, once again, to step up and do their job and secure our own election platforms. That's what we're doing right now. That's President Trump's mandate for the people. Secure your elections. We have his support. And we have the confidence and trust in each one of you across this country. So let's get it done. Go to lindellplan.com today. Go check it out. And let's firmly plant our feet to secure and save our elections. We have literally less than a year before primaries begin. And actually, I think probably starting in June, you're going to start seeing the contenders. You're going to start hearing who's popping up for these races. And we need to make sure that we're having real elections. We're going to be having more conversation about that. But causeofamerica.org does a Monday night conference call that addresses a lot of these topics, brings in the foremost experts on elections, allows for question and answer time. How do we actually practically do this in 3,143 counties across the country? It is completely doable with the plan at causeofamerica.org. Mike Lindell's organization that stretches and reaches 500,000 plus volunteers across this country. We are going to get it done, but we need you. So please join this fight today. Stand with us to secure our elections because it's the policies that matter so much. It's the impact of these elected representatives and what they do to us. You know, that's what DOJ is exposing, what they've been doing to us, and it ain't right. I want to thank you for being with us today on America's Mom. Remember, as always, the only way that evil can continue to prosper is if you and I, good men and women, do absolutely nothing. Look forward to seeing you guys back here very soon.
It was hard times living in a system that was too scared to share the truth and make a difference. I was sitting in ambition, then I saw the vision. I would multiply the love and subtract the division. And I'm not a mathematician, but it didn't add up. Praising politicians when they try to mask us. They say they're about the science, but they fake the data. They say they're gonna save us, but they really lab rat us. I don't really want to blindfold, see both sides or keep your eyes closed. Still accept the lies, well sorry I don't. All that we deny will still be exposed. And I know these are hard times living. Most of us have reached our limit. The devil on attack with more clone gimmicks. There's no more time to be timid. Live this life with the light of the risen. 'Cause I don't gotta wait no more, chasing after things that they just can't tell you. Tell me I don't wait